Oh, fellow campers and canoe trippers. Well, it's the middle of January in Minnesota, and it's well below zero outside. So I thought it would take us back to warmer days up in the Boundary Waters and talk about some of the lanterns and lights that I use on my canoe trips. But first of all, let's get some summer outfit on here. All right. Alright, let me start off. This is just the things that I take along on the canoe trip. When I do any river camping, where I don't have to do any portaging, or we're on a car camping trip, I take along stuff that's a lot bigger. I'll take along one of my collector lanterns to light up the campsite, or for a flashlight, I'll take that along. That keeps the raccoons out of the food, chases them out of the campsite. Okay, now let's look at the stuff I take when I go canoeing. I want to start off with my early days when I was in Boy Scouts back in 1958. That's the first light and lantern I ever used. It was given to me by a well-meaning uncle who thought that I should have a really good light for camping. I thought it was way too big, and when I took it up to Northern Lights on my very first Boy Scout trip, it mostly spent its time on the floor of the tents, the big tents that we used. And it had a lantern and a big reflector. And it never got much use after that. I think back around the house my dad used it more than I did. Okay? Now, later on, I got myself just what I always wanted, a real Boy Scout flashlight. The clip attaches to your belt and everything else. I had one sort of like that when I was in the Army. Same idea. Okay? Now, like most high school students, before I started my senior year, I took a backpacking trip to Europe. That was really big to do back in the middle 60s. And in Paris, I got myself a three-piece cook kit. There's a lunch box, a flask, and a candle lantern. Look, candle lantern, one of these. All right. Well, it was made to go into a tent, to hang from the inside of your tent. And it's one of those ones that has the spring on the inside, so the candle moves up and down inside. And there's the spot where the candle goes. And then it has a spring-loaded mechanism that pushes the candle up. So you've always got a nice bright candle flame right in the middle of the glass. Well, this is okay, but it doesn't want to sit inside of a tent or any place else on the floor. It keeps tipping over. It wasn't made to sit. It was made to hang. Well, I use that on a few camping trips, but what I did is I moved along, and when I really started going canoeing up north, I got one of these. I'm sure you've all seen these. They're sold under a couple different names, and it uses the same system. It has the spring-loaded candle that goes on the inside. Now, I got myself some beeswax candles to use in it. Then I read an outdoor book and it said, well, the old-timers, they use beeswax candles to attract bears for bear hunting. Well, so much for that idea. I didn't take anything with me that I wanted to have a beeswax candle burning in a tent. Now, let me show you a couple accessories that go with this, and they really work. One is the reflector. It has some pins and notches that go together. And it forms a little hood like this that you slip over the top of the handle to form a little reflector lamp. Now people said, does that really work? You know, is that really worth it? Well, it does, because I tried it out. I wanted to find out if it really reflected enough light down to make it useful. And I hung this up on a little bush, and I had my my chair and I sat and I could read a book in the evening with enough light coming off of that. Okay? Now the other little accessory that they sell for it is this reflector. And I think most people use one of these. And it clips onto the top. It goes on like that. Well, that does throw a little bit of light around. But what I found it most useful for was to block the glare of the burning candle. Okay? You want it hanging up in a tree someplace just to give some general light around the camp area. And you're sitting over here. Well, there's this really bright light coming off of this you really don't want. You just want some general light around the camp area. So that works better to block the glare. Alright. Now, moving along with candles, let me show you this rascal. This is a stone bridge candle lantern. Now, I grew up in a little village called Lewiston, and it was at the foot of the portage that went around Niagara Falls. That's how it started out back in the French and Indian War days. In fact, the village was burned down during the French and Indian War. Well, they had a lot of old stores in Lewiston, and one of them was a feed store. And when it closed down in the early 60s, they sold everything. They just dragged it out in the street, piled it up, and they were selling it. And one of the things that I bought for the princely sum of around $5 or so was this stone bridge candle lantern. And I thought this would be great for a canoe trip or taking up the Boy Scout camp. Well, they said, no, sorry, no open flames. So the only use it really got were a couple times it hung outside of a tent, a floor tent on one of the big camps. That's about all it was used for. It was really nice, real mica isinglass windows. It has a big bear trap thing on the bottom to hold the candle in place. Yay! Well, a couple years later, I was flipping through a book I had, Trips from a Wilderness Log by Cal Runstrom. Mr. Runstrom and I shared a property line. He had a cabin on the other side of the woods from mine, and he was a big outdoor writer. You don't hear much about him nowadays, but he was a big, major outdoor writer. And here's a picture of him as a kid on one of his trips up in Canada using a stone bridge lantern. And I thought that was really nifty. I had the right kind of gear, tested and used by a famous guy. Well, that was too heavy to take along, so I got this one. This is a smaller, modern-made lantern, but it's on exactly the same principle. It unfolds the same way. It has isinglass mica windows. The top folds down and latches in exactly the same way. Got kind of the big bear trap thing in the bottom to hold the candle. And this one has a door in the back, so you can reach in and light the candle. And the door has a reflector on it. Okay? Throw a little more light around. I take this on camping trips all the time. I have some small candle stubs I save up, and I'll put one in there and hang it on a tree and just let it burn. And at night, before we go to bed, it kind of lights the camp up a little bit. Sometimes I put my tent further back in the woods than the general camping area, so I'll have that back there as a marker just to show where the tent is. Well, moving on to the modern era, let me show you a couple things. Headlamps. I had a few of them. This is the style with the bulb in it. It was kind of an early one. I didn't like it because it has this extra strap across the top that always seemed to get in the way, and the bulb and the batteries burned out pretty fast. Well, then I got one that was a LED lights, and it's really good. It throws a lot of light around. It's got a flashing unit, but it had a head strap on it too. And if you're caving or something like that, it might be useful. But just for around the camp, in the boundary waters, in the evening, it's too much. You didn't need it. On my early trips, when I wanted a flashlight, I just took one out of the glove compartment of my car and used one of these. And that was real handy, but not waterproof. So I looked around and I got a diver's flashlight. Okay? The problem with that was, to turn it off and on, you have to move the bezel. You have to move the lens apparatus around. Well, it's really good if you're skin diving. And all you want to do is turn it on and go down and look around, and then when you get back up to the boat, you turn it off. Well, when you're out camping, that's a real hassle, because you're going to want to use a flashlight 3 or 4 times during the night. So you're always turning the thing off and on and off and on and off and on in a real awkward way. And it has a tendency to take that O-ring and kind of squish it out of place. Plus you got to make sure that all the threads are well oiled. Otherwise the thing really sticks. So, let me show you now a few things that I got that really didn't work out, or I just got them just to see what they would do. Take some light sticks along, take one of those, 2 of those, and throw them into my boat bag, just for an emergency light, as a just in case. I thought I'd try out one of these. These are the ones with the solar panel things in them. And this is a real good one by LL Bean. It's a nice little light. But to charge it, you have to have it out in the into the sunlight. Well, during the day while you're paddling, that means you have to have it sitting out on a pack or someplace in the canoe where it's getting the direct sunlight. Well, then you stop and you portage. You got to fiddle with this, putting this away someplace, or it rolls off. It's just one more piece of stuff you have to hassle with that you don't want to. And same thing in a campsite. You're fiddling around, you unpack your gear, you got your light. Where am I going to put this? I put it out in the sunlight. Maybe it's raining. Too much problem. Batteries are much better, especially batteries in a new modern light. I'll show that to you in a second. Speaking of batteries and solar panels, I got one of these when they first came out. And I thought that would be interesting. I'd be able to charge my batteries as I went along and not take as many with me. Well, again, that was, well, where are you going to put it? You put it on the pack, you put it in the canoe, you put it in the campsite. And the new modern ones may work better, but once again, I found the weight of this is almost the same weight as a couple of the small batteries I take along, so why bother? A modern thing that I got that I didn't think would be really good, but it didn't work out, was one of these little lights. This one's supposed to be really nifty because you can turn it off and on by swishing your finger across a little panel. Well, sometimes you have to swish your finger a bunch of times to get it to work and turn off, and I didn't like that. I wanted something that worked as soon as I wanted it to light. Okay? Now let me show you what the replacement is for that in just a second. Another gizmo I got was one of these. You know, a little snorkel kind of gizmo. And you put a battery in it, and there's a little switch in there, and you put it on the front of your baseball cap. You know, and you're supposed to be able to use it to do whatever at night, and that doesn't work. Got one of these. This is a little tool, kind of like a miniature Leatherman, and it has a little light on it, and it has the usual tools that you find in one of these things, a pair of pliers and a knife and, you know, fingernail file. And that went in the bottom of my day bag a few trips and stayed right there, never got used. No need for that. And then this guy, that's what I demonstrated on my last video. A carbide lamp. It'll throw a beam, probably about 20 feet or so, but they're not made for any kind of lighting up any distance. They're made to put on a miner's lamp right there and work on a coal seam right there. Okay? And plus, it smells. It really stinks. So if you're downwind in a campsite while that's running, you'll smell it. And I took it a couple times just for the heck of seeing if it worked and use it for a nightlight. Now let me show you the ones that I take on every camping trip. This is what I've sort of come up with over the years, is the stuff that I really take and really work. First off is a small candle lamp, a small gas lamp. Okay, I take one cartridge along, and I usually write on it lamp only, and I keep it in my pack rather than in the food bag where I have the other gas cartridges. It not only throws out lots of light if you need a lot of light in an emergency, like there's been a storm and it's knocked your tent down or something, or you pushed your canoe off into the bushes and you need a lot of light. It also puts out a lot of heat, an awful lot of heat. So on cold nights, rainy nights, I put this in the vestibule of my tent, my Echo tent, which is right over here, out of the way. Sits out on there, puts out a ton of heat, and with the door open and the vestibule shut, I can sit inside my tent and get nice and warm and cozy with the heat coming off of this set at its absolutely lowest setting. And that cartridge, at a really low setting, if it's not used a lot on a 2-week camping trip, will last the whole trip. And I always keep it inside of the plastic case it came in, along with a couple extra mantles. Okay. The other light that I use is this one. This is called a PAL light, and it takes a 9-volt battery, and it's a rubberized case. And a 9-volt battery, I'm told, has what's called a natural drain. And even with the light turned off, there's a small glow coming out of the LED in there. Well, I put this into the little net pouch inside my tent, along with my glasses and my bear sprayer. And then at night, in the absolute pitch blackness inside the tent, way over in the corner, there might be able to see just a tiny little light. And if I need my glasses or my bear sprayer when it's totally dark, I have a little light and I can just reach right over and I know where my glasses and my bear sprayer are immediately. Plus, it's a handy little light. It throws out enough light to really see around a campsite, and it's small, very nice. I had a hard time finding it. I don't know if they make this style anymore. Okay. The other one is a replacement for that little LED light that I showed you a minute ago. This has a push button switch. So when I push on it, it goes on, period. You don't have to fiddle around with it. I keep this on a zinger. One of these things. I usually find these to put the fly fishermen like them to put their little tools on. Okay. I put it on the pocket of my camping shirt. So if I want a light, I've got one right there. It's a light to find a light. You're inside the tent, you're inside the shelter, you're sitting by the campfire, you're looking around, where did I put that down? I have a light immediately, bonk, right there. Oh, that's what I'm looking for. There's my good light. Okay? And there's the good light that I use almost all the time. $9, got a bunch of LEDs in it. It takes the same kind of batteries that go into my headlamp. So I have just one style. It's always worked. I never had any problems with it. Plus, I can hang it by this lanyard inside my tent in the evening and use it to read by. Okay? And last but not least is my headlamp. I just got a small one. Doesn't have that extra strap around the top. Throws out more than enough light for a camping in the boundary waters. By the time I need a light in the evening, especially in the summer, it's almost time to bag it and call it a night. 10 o'clock at night, it's still light up there. But if you want it around the door of the tent, or you're fiddling around, or you're even looking in your bag to try and find things in the bag, the little headlamp comes in handy. And that's a nice small one. Works great. Okay? So there it is, fellow campers and canoe trippers. There's 30 or 40 or 50 years worth of camping lights. Some that worked, some that didn't, some that were better than others, some that stay home, some that I'll never use again, some are just on display, some are just gizmos. And just to finish up, let me show you what I light them with. People say, well, what do you light them with? Okay, plain old strike anywhere wooden kitchen matches, or one of these things, or any kind of little Bic light, or I have flamers. These big flamers. You want to really light a candle, boy, that'll do it. And way down in the very bottom of my pack, over the years, I've had this. That's my old Boy Scout match safe, and some of those blue ones have been in there since the 1960s. One more really good kind of match I think you should take along are this style. They're the ones with a really long stick on them, and they're not like fireplace matches, they're just outdoor matches, but now you've got enough space to be able to reach inside a lantern like this and really light the thing up. Alright, so there it is, fellow campers, canoe trippers. Stay safe while you're out on the water, and have a great winter. I'll be taking the summer off a little bit, but I have some more videos for you later.